Well, good morning, Trinity friends, and welcome to our Adult Forum series as we continue to explore the baptismal covenant together. As you can see, we have today with us our youth minister, Debbie Cox, here to talk with us and to join us in our conversation about our baptismal covenant, particularly from the perspective as her role as a youth minister and how she sees our youth interacting and wrestling with our baptismal covenant. So, Debbie, thanks for taking the time today to be with us.
Thank you, David.
We're glad you're here.
Thanks.
As you may have watched our previous series, we've discussed a couple of different questions that we vow in our baptismal covenant. With Tim Ervolina, we talked about striving for justice and peace among all people and respecting the dignity of every human being. And with the Reverend Dina Whalen of the Church of the Advocate, we talked about continuing in the apostles' teaching, fellowship, in the breaking of the bread, and in the prayer. So if you haven't watched them, I would encourage you to go back and watch those two pieces of this series because they're very insightful and very informative and offer a really unique perspective as both Tim and Dina are involved in the Church of the Advocate here at Trinity. But today, here with Debbie, we are talking about seeking to serve Christ in all persons and loving your neighbor as yourself. Now, as we've talked about this before, this is a hard one right now sometimes. How do you see this as a need, I guess, in our current conversation? Because when I think about this might be one of the most important promises we make and one of the most difficult promises we make.
Well, I mean, the baptismal covenant, in my opinion, is just the fundamental way of our spiritual life. And so the question of loving your neighbor as ourselves is very hard in this time. But as we did this summer, we served in different parts of our community with our summer service Wednesdays, and we're continuing to do that the first Wednesdays of every month at ABCCM. And just being kind. I noticed our youth lately have been, they're kidding a lot, but I think they are imaging what our adults are doing. So sometimes when I see them kid, I'm like, where did you hear that from? And they'll say, from my parents. And so I've asked them to be kind and to seek their own spiritual life with prayer and just trying to, as they read the baptismal covenant, it's about reconciliation of yourselves and with others and a deeper strength with the relationship with God. So
being kind is not something we see a lot of in our media culture, whether you're talking about the news or you're talking about movies and television shows. Kindness doesn't get a lot of airplay, so to speak. And so, developing that can be a really countercultural thing, especially for our youth. They're in some of the more diverse areas in Asheville, being in high school amongst people who are different from them. They're in touch with neighbors that maybe we're not in touch with. And so working out how to be kind in those situations can be really difficult and really fraught. It can be a struggle.
Yeah, and since right now some are on Zoom, and some of our youth are in person, so it's hard for them to actually be with their peers. And when they are, sometimes that's good and bad. But what I've seen lately, it's just they're kidding a lot more. But they also, I do feel like they're craving to be with one another too, and the diversity that you see with, I guess, with you're trying to say with their friends at school or in their community, it's a hard one. I think they're trying to understand it, like we all are. So I think they're trying to understand what's going on in their world and being a part of that and how to treat one another.
Yeah. A lot of what's going on in their world is going on in the adult world,
right.
too. You've got differences of opinion when it comes to politics, when it comes to religion or no religion. You've got different socioeconomic and racial groups that they're interacting with and involved with, and reconciling that with their own identity as Christians and as Episcopalians can be a struggle. I know one of the things that we've talked about a lot is anxiety in our especially our high school students. There's a lot of pressure on our high school students. They're pressured to perform. They're pressured to get good grades. The standards for getting into college seem more and more competitive each year. They were certainly more competitive than when I went to college.
Yeah.
And so when I think about this particular question, particularly in terms of our young folks and adults too, it says to love your neighbor as yourself. And that as yourself part can sometimes be really hard to wrap your heads around the idea that to love our neighbors, we have to be able to love ourselves too. Not in a selfish way, but in a wholesome and holistic way. And so talk in a general way, talk about what you see amongst our young folks over your time as a youth minister and how that's changed in terms of that struggle to know yourself first and then to love yourself.
And I think you and I have talked about this. Social media is the biggest thing with our youth. Their anxiety
and some adults.
Yeah, their anxiety is through the roof. That is the number one thing that's wrong with not wrong, but
the struggle
that they're going through. So anxiety is the number one thing, and loving themselves is really hard right now because of social media and their friends on social media, how many likes you have, what TikTok video you have, and how many followers you have. So that's a big issue, and you and I have talked about that.
And a lot of our students, they're in an environment that tries to measure them by their performance. Right. It tries to center their worth and their identity and whether they make good grades or whether they make the sports team. And the idea that your identity is wrapped up in how well you perform is going to produce a lot of anxiety in anybody. It's tough to think about if I do well, then I'm a good person.
Right.
And if I do poorly, then I'm a bad person.
But like you always have told me too, is that God looks at us, they're children. I mean, they're children of God. So they, in God's eyes, they are number one. So, and it's hard for them to realize that because they have peers that don't believe the same way they do.
Right.
But I always think our baptismal covenant is one of the best things because it says everything you need to say.
And that's why we focus on it during confirmation.
Yes.
This is one of the reasons why we really focus on the baptismal covenant during confirmation, because it really is, like you were talking about, it's the way. It's the way we live. It's the pattern of our life. And when we talk about loving our neighbor as ourselves and serving Christ in all persons, and we talk about that struggle to love yourself because of how the world tries to tell you what your worth is, and then trying to redirect ourselves even too, because we get caught up in it as well. This idea that our worth and our identity is in our belovedness as children of God.
Right.
And that is an unusual thing to say to kids, and it can be and to youth and to adults, and it can be hard even as an adult to remind myself of that each and every day, and to really have that be the center of my identity. And I think that when that is the center of our identity, it becomes easier to love our neighbors, because it's a lot more difficult to love my neighbor if I look at them and I say, you believe differently than I do, or I think differently than I do. But if I look at them and I say, you're God's child as I am, then maybe we have a chance at meeting it on a more common ground.
Well, and it's hard for them to be an Episcopalian. I mean, because some of our young people, their peers are atheists or they don't believe. But as our community here, I think they believe strongly. Our confirmation weekends that we've had, there's some deep meaning
we
have a good time there. And
we have a
also,
great time, but we have incredibly deep conversations.
We do have deep conversations.
And if anybody ever wonders whether, teenagers are wrestling with the same things that adults are wrestling with, absolutely. They are. And the way they're thinking about things is deep, and it's profound, and it's complicated, and it's nuanced at times. It gives me great joy every time we do a confirmation course with our students, because it's amazing to watch them process their faith, to come to new insights and realizations, to learn more. But also, I come away learning things from them as well. I come away with a deeper faith from them. And so it's this wonderful mutual uplift. And so, if anybody in our parish is interested in learning more about our youth, they really do offer such insight in so many ways. And sometimes we'll do this question box where we'll have them ask questions about theology and life. And I always promise them, I don't promise answers.
Right.
I will promise a conversation.
Right.
Because the questions they're asking don't have easy answers. And that's the same kind of questions that we have. And I guess... I
think that we accept them for where they are in their spiritual life and those weekends. And I do think they come, when they are confirmed, they actually do take that pretty seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, seeking and serving Christ in all persons. So this is that piece of the baptismal covenant where we have to consciously look around at our world, at all the varied people in our world, and seek to serve Christ in them. You mentioned when we first started going out to VRQ and ABCCM, something y'all did this summer with the youth, and our youth are ministering, our students are ministering to kind of those on the deepest margins, particularly in the midst of this pandemic. I know it was great for them to see each other and be around each other, but talk about what you saw in them and with them as they sought to serve Christ amongst those who are most vulnerable in our community.
Well, I think with the Manna Food Bank, they wanted to make sure they had a whole pallet done. And where that was going to go. And so I think at Manna they were telling me, okay, this is not just serving Asheville. We're actually sending this to Kinston and some of the, because we had a lot of hurricanes this year, so they were sending them to different places. So I think, and they would race, to get it all done. And, and then I did ask them, you never have to think about food. You always
have for a lot of us here.
Yeah. You always have a meal. So can you even? And they don't realize it until I have to kind of say that to them, that you have a meal at home, but we are doing this for other people, and that's why they do it. Of course, they do it for they have to get their service hours, but I do think that they think of, especially when we went to go to Steadfast House where it was women and children. Like one of my youth, when they saw a child, they go, I can't believe a child is homeless and they're here. And I said, yes, and I think that was a reality. Oh my gosh, this really is a reality that our young people are homeless.
It's a big shock to realize that some of your peers at school might be homeless, might not know where their next meal is coming from, might rely on the school meals for sustenance and nourishment. And to be able to engage with that reality that so many of our community experience helps them develop empathy, helps me develop empathy. Mm-hmm. It can be really easy. I guess that's the other thing about neighbors. It can be really easy for me to choose my neighbors.
Right.
As an adult, I can choose my neighbors.
Right.
And I can limit who I'm exposed to and how I'm exposed to them. And that's really comfortable. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the great things about some of the programs that you're doing as a youth, and one of the challenges of being a student is that you don't get to choose who your neighbors are. You're thrown in with all your neighbors. Mm-hmm. In some ways, I think that actually makes for a healthier community and a healthier society.
Right.
Because they're not as partitioned as students as we can be as adults in our little spheres and influences.
And we don't even realize, we always forget that Trinity Place is right across the way, and that we always try to think of that. That those are, and I'll say that sometimes to our young people. We do have young people that have run away from, that are that are not have a good home life, and they're right here at Trinity Place, which is our neighbor.
Yeah.
So we do try to take care of them also, and remember that neighbor. It's just like Church of the Advocate too.
Yeah, this campus really is a microcosm of Asheville. If you're at if you're at Trinity's campus, in this space especially, at Trinity's campus, if you're here throughout the week, you really do see a microcosm of our entire community. I think that's one of the beautiful things about Trinity's ministry, and one of the ways that Trinity as a whole lives out its baptismal covenant.
Yes.
It's here on this space unfolding. You've got every swath of our community who has a place here on this campus where they're fed and they're nourished by either our ministry or a ministry that's housed here. So to see not just our own individual ways that we live out this covenant, but how we as a community live out this covenant, because Lord knows I can't do this on my own.
No.
I can't do any of these things on my own, and I think that's the other thing that is hard to get across sometimes to both adults and youth. We're in such an individualized culture that these vows we make, they're communal vows.
Right.
They're vows that I make individually, but I make together with our community, because this baptismal covenant, we say, it's not just between the celebrant and the people who are being baptized or confirmed. It's between us and it's between everybody.
And I think when we do all these, like we do when we go to Manna or VRQ, it deepens their faith. It deepens their sense of community, of us being together and what we believe in the baptismal covenant. So I do think that helps our community, and it broadens their horizons, I guess. So,
I love that we're talking about this particular question the week after a really contentious election. And who knows what's going to happen between the time we record this and the time we air this. But, this is a question that I think serves us really well in this moment. In a moment of partisanship and vitriol and disunity. This is a question that unites us as at least a faith community, where we really are called to look at the world in the midst of all the division and see neighbors. I always am reminded of in moments like these, of the story of Zacchaeus, when the whole crowds wanted to demonize Zacchaeus and run him out of town.
right.
And what did Jesus do? Jesus says, well, come on down, I want to have dinner at your house.
Yeah.
And Jesus angers the crowds because they were condemning Zacchaeus and thought he was a terrible person. And I feel like that's the hardest thing for our culture right now, is to look out and to see someone who might be being demonized in some way and to think, they make a good dinner companion.
Right.
That's not something we think about. But
Right.
I think that's the beauty of our faith and the beauty of what we're called to do. And so I've been holding this particular question in my heart this week, of how we can serve and see Christ in all of our neighbors. So anyway, we've got two more questions to talk about. We're not going to do those today, of course. We'll break these up question by question each week. But in the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about proclaiming by word and example the good news of God in Christ. And we're going to be talking about persevering and resisting evil, and whenever we fall into sin, repent and return to the Lord. So we've got two good ones coming up. So I do hope you will tune in with us each Sunday as we finish up this series, as we lead into Advent, into the new year, the new Christian liturgical year. Debbie, thank you so much for coming with us. Thank you for your ministry here among us. Thank you for what you mean to so many people here, particularly our students.
Thank you, David.
See you next week.